ICRISAT on open data and genomics.
Thank you very much, Tim, and a very good morning to all of you. So first of all, I would like to thank the organizers for giving us this opportunity. And in this presentation, I'm going to share some of our views and work from ICRISAT and Generation Challenge program, which are the CGIAR organizations in the area of open data in genomics and modern breeding for crop improvement. So when we talk about the food security or international agriculture, generally we talk about three major crops. They are maize, rice and wheat. But in fact, in addition to these three major crops, there are many other crops which are very important in developing countries. So in terms of the production as well in terms of ensuring the food security and income generation, these crops include several legumes like chickpea, cowpea, pigeonpea or sorghum and millets. And because these crops have not been the subject of the attention of international scientific community majority of time, or often they are called orphan crops. As these crops, they are grown in marginal environments by resource poor farmers, the crop productivity is very less. So now the next question is that how genomics can help improving the crop productivity for these orphan crops. Of course, there are many possibilities and there are different kind of applications. I have listed here 2-3 where some of us we discussed those strategies recently, and these are the three approaches that we have discussed: marker-assisted backcrossing, marker-assisted recurrent selection, genomic selection. So these are the modern breeding approaches. And these approaches have been very successful in developing the superior varieties, but majority of time these examples have been restricted to major crops or in the developed world or in the private sector, but this has not been the case in many of orphan crops or in the developing countries. What may be the regions and what we need? We need to have the genomic resources and cost-effective genotyping platform if we would like to see the application of genomics in breeding. And then of course precise phenotyping data. And once we have these genomics and phenomics data, we need our approach is that we need to have this thing open access or open data so that breeders who have generated information at one location, this can be used by the other breeders at other locations. So this is very important. And then another thing is that we need to have the breeders friendly pipeline and decision support tools. So this is some of the important approaches we need to use for when we are applying the genomics in the breeding program. As I told, that genomics assisted breeding has been very successful in many case crops, but when we talk about these orphan crops like chickpea, etc., and then we did not have many success stories, but recently in collaboration with Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and Generation Challenge program, ICRISAT has developed or basically introgressed 1 QTLs for drought tolerance in 3 varieties, one from Ethiopia, one from Kenya, one from India. And now by using this molecular breeding approach, we could identify several lines where we are having more than 24% yield advantage over the recipient varieties. So now what I'm trying to say that success stories have started to come in these crops as well. So in this context, when we are talking about the molecular, and now we are talking about the basically translating this genomics research from the laboratory to land, which is the main target of many CGIAR research institutes. So we need to enhance the crop productivity in developing countries. And when we are trying to use these genomics approaches, then I mentioned earlier that we are having a range of the molecular breeding approaches. And you can see on right hand side on this green color line, which is going high. And so basically we believe that in next 3 to 5 years, genomic selection is going to be the approach for as a promising molecular breeding approach, especially when the cost of genotyping is going down. You can see this dotted line, the green color line. So that's the approach that we need to use. But again, what we need to do, we need to have the platform. So in this context, and partnership is another important thing where ICRISAT and GCP work very closely with several partners. So recently we have sequenced the chickpea genome, and this work was product of 23 organizations from 10 different countries and funded by several organizations. The same thing, we have done the sequencing of the pigeonpea genome. So the sequencing again is the start of the game. This is not the end of the story. And then if we would like to see those application of the genomics in breeding program, and as cost of the sequencing is going down, then the idea is that we need to generate the genomics data or the sequencing data not only from one variety or 2 variety, and nowadays there are several initiatives where we are generating the sequencing data from hundreds of thousands or hundreds of thousands of the line. And now the question is that, well, how to share these data? So this is very important, and our approach is that we need to put these data in public domain so that this can be shared. And now when we are talking about this resequencing, so idea is that basically we are living in the world of the data tsunami. So how to handle this data? And nowadays several organizations, they already started to work in this direction. And in context of CGIAR, and yesterday we were having this mention of that some approach of integrated crop data management in CGIAR. So CGIAR already started to discuss these things, and in this context they are discussing with several CG centers and in collaboration with the Gates Foundation and then the Generation Challenge Program. Generation Challenge Program, so why we need to have this crop data management? Because this is very important to improve the breeding practices in terms of parental selection. And another thing is that most breeding programs do not and should not operate in isolation. We need to learn from each other. We need to use the data from one breeding program to the other one. So in this context, Generation Challenge Program, again in collaboration with Gates Foundation, have established a platform called Integrated Breeding Platform. An integrated breeding platform provides resources and building professional networks for plant breeding. Here you can get the crop information data. You can download the global crop information data. This is in open access, and then you can upload it again after using or after generating more data. And here in IBP you can also have a lot of bioinformatic or data analytical tools. We are also discussing and collaborating with VGI, and in collaboration with Integrated Breeding Platform and VGI, our approach is that what we need to do in future, that we need to have those data collection centers. So for instance, from one center you need to generate the genotyping data, phenotyping data, environmental data, and then data analysis, and then you are having basically uploading of all these data at one place. And then this is not only at one center, they need to have similar kind of strategy across the several centers. So in the end, what we would like to see that we need to have the global data center, and once we have these global data center, they can be shared by, they can be put in the open access, and IBP can play a very important role. So basically, idea is that if you are having, and we think that in next few years, or if we can follow this model, then basically this needs to be at the global level, and then you can have the different data centers. You can have the global data center. So basically, breeders who are geneticists or genomics specialists who have generated information at one place like North America can be used by the breeders in, for instance, in Sub-Saharan Africa. So basically, we need to have this global breeding, and we can do this thing by putting all these data as open data. So we think that in coming years, when we have the global data center, they need to have the association linkages on one hand with the omics center, where for instance the genotyping or sequencing center. So here they can have the interfaces or uploading the sequencing data or genotyping data. On another hand, you need to have the breeding research center. Here CGIAR centers, they can play a very important role. And then there should be the linkages, or again on the right hand side, with the field farmers through National Agriculture Research System. So we need to follow this kind of model, and we believe that this can be possible only when the different partners or organizations involved in these different activities, they put all their data as open data. So I think the take-home message from this presentation is that open data is essential for international agriculture, and omics centers, breeding centers, and data centers are the requirements for future international agriculture. And again, the very important thing is data analysis, because when we generate huge amount of data, the management, the analysis, the interpretation of data is very important. And this needs to be centralized for effective use of molecular breeding, and initiatives like integrated breeding platform can play a very important role. And of course, capacity building and government policies in developing countries are very important. And in this presentation, I have presented the work from several collaborators, including the Advanced Research Institute and several national partners from South Asia and Africa. And some of our work was funded by Generation Challenge Program, Gates Foundation, USAID, Indian Council of Agriculture Research, and also we are having some grants from Illumina. So thank you very much, and I would be happy to answer any question.